Hello and welcome back to Anonymous Animators. Today we are going to be discussing
Kung Fu Panda!
Yes, we just finished re-watching it. I think this is my third time watching it.
I want to say, yeah, I think it's my third time too.
Yeah, and and we're going to review both Kung Fu Pandas in lieu of Kung Fu Panda 3.
I'd like to see it at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to go watch it in the theaters, but
it does. Well, I mean, it's a Kung Fu parody movie. That would be fun.
Well, I love Kung Fu, so from the get-go. And that's one of the things I love about this movie is the Kung Fu. And the other thing I love about this movie is the panda, so it sums it up really nicely in the title. I'm just going to get straight out there and say I like this movie. That there's not a lot that I can say that I dislike about this movie. Outside of like the usual sort of nitpicky, like DreamWorks decisions, DreamWorks design, and I guess that's what we'll get into. But for at least for the start of it, I'm going to mention what I like about this movie.
Okay.
And that is mostly the Kung Fu, because I since I was a kid, I've always loved like watching Kung Fu films and everything, and mostly just for the Kung Fu, because that's how Kung Fu flicks are usually designed.
It's basically like porn, but
yeah, it's kind of you are 100% correct. It is like how porn is like the story is there just to sort of add to it's the sex is there just to get through. Same thing with Kung Fu flicks. It's like, oh, we really want to just watch people beat the tar out of each other. But like, what story can we kind of add into it? And that's why like the actors are so bad, and you know, and of course when it's badly dubbed, it's a beautiful mess of a cake, and you enjoy it, you can eat it, but it looks horrible, and you're not sure why you're enjoying it.
It's like that hedgehog pic on it's like. It's a Pinterest, like a really beautiful hedgehog cake that was done by like a professional cake designer, and then next to it is a picture. It's just
really
the caption is nailed it.
Yeah, and a derpy hedgehog that looks like it's yeah. But yeah, so like that's the first thing that like I when I watched this, I was like really enamored by was just all the beautiful Kung Fu poses. It's something I've always just loved in general. Like, I know you know that I'm also very fond of, like, wrestling, but for, like, a different reason. Like, I love that luchadora wrestling because even though it is a legitimate, like, I guess, fighting style in its own way, I love it for the showmanship. And I feel, like, a little bit different with Kung Fu. I love for the technicality behind it, you know? And, I mean, Kung Fu itself is kind of like an art form, you know, like, to do things as beautifully and smoothly as possible. You know, it's great. And of course, the classic story Kung Fu Panda has from like Kung Fu influences outside of the masters of the different styles. Like the classic story of student becomes dangerous. I guess attempts to hurt the master. In this story, he does. And the second time around, he like comes back and he's like, "No, I'm going to kill you." Outside of like any logical, you know, story, it's like, oh, I've been locked away for 20 years and yet somehow I've become stronger.
You're talking about the villain, of course.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen it, why haven't
you? It's been
like 8 years old.
Yeah, it's been out for a while, so I'm not going
2008.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, 8 years old now, so at the point of this recording, and it's what I get into, and like this, same thing I can say now with the second film. I really enjoyed.
I actually haven't seen the second film yet.
Yeah,
it was one of those things that, like, I meant to see it, but I don't know. It's one of those things you never get around to doing, and then suddenly the third movie comes out, and you're like, oh, shoot.
You get wary from watching sequels, right? Like in this, I feel the same way with, like, a lot of animated films, and just maybe kind of films in general. I guess with exceptions on both sides. But when it comes to sequels, like, I mean, I think we also come from a generation where, like, Disney did that thing with the sequels, and they were always terrible direct-to-video. Like, I mean, Aladdin was the exception, right? It was like, wow, these are amazing, but...
Have you seen Aladdin 2 recently, though?
No, not recently, but wasn't the third one really good? In my head,
was,
I think they're good, but maybe I'm wrong.
It
Point
was,
being is we come from that era where...
it was decent. I actually would argue the only decent Disney sequel, direct-to-video sequel I've ever seen and, like, thought was halfway good was actually Lion King 2. I have people who vehemently disagree with me on that, but I don't know. I liked it. It was fun. The animation wasn't god-awful.
Oh, well, I mean, you I don't know. I can't think of any particular sequel that was, like, terrible animation. I mean, maybe not necessarily feature quality, because obviously they had to cut corners or whatever.
The Aladdin sequels were actually done by the same people who did the TV show.
Oh, yeah? Well, the TV show was pretty good.
Mm.
I mean, well, maybe again, just sort of, nostalgia goggles on. I enjoyed watching the TV show as a kid. Like,
well, so did I, but, I mean, I'm just saying...
Are you talking about it from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, it was entering, like, Disney was kind of entering into that era of cutting many corners.
Yeah, that's the thing. So we're a little gun shy when it comes to that, right? Like, I think definitely because, we have, like, Lion King 2 and Little Mermaid 2 and geez,
I remember the second Little Mermaid was awful. It was literally Ariel's story, but reversed. It was a girl who wanted to be a mermaid, and it's like, didn't we do this in the first movie? And it's like, it's not Ursula, it's freaking Ursula's sister. And now thinking back on it, I'm like, this is fan fiction.
Yeah, it's that's why, like, I think a lot of, like, like our peer group or our age group at least get, like, sort of when it comes to a sequel. And I still have that, like, in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, geez, another animation sequel. But then I'll go watch it and I'll kind of enjoy it. But then we've also got things. It's not like the modern day cartoon is any better. In the sense of, sure, the quality is fine, but sometimes the storytelling is trite. Like, what comes to mind in particular is Madagascar, the Madagascar series. Like, the first one was fine, and the second and third one I didn't really care for. Ice Age is another example. The fourth Madagascar film I actually kind of enjoyed.
I was so far gone, like, I enjoyed Madagascar the first time. The second time, I was like, wow, this did not hold up even a year after its release.
Yeah, and so, like, so when you see animation sequel, it's like, it's, there's just so much work that goes into building and preparing, like, 3D models and rigs and everything that goes into making a huge show that I think they sometimes forget. They're like, oh, well, we've done all the R&D to develop the show. Like, oh, and, like, I guess we don't have to spend as much money. I don't exactly know what the mindset is.
Well, it's like we were talking about this afternoon after we got home from work about how, like video games have basically turned into just this plethora of shoot-'em-ups, and it's like everyone's always trying to outdo each other on their engines and just how realistic they can make their 34th grizzled man, like, middle-aged man with scar on face, whatever. But it's like, and we were talking about how, like, back in the PlayStation 1 era, how video games were so much more interesting because no one knew what to do.
Yeah.
So they just sort of threw stuff at the wall and saw what stuck.
Yeah. Like, there wasn't as much conglomerate control. Conglomerate's not the right word, but, like, I guess there were a lot less producers or execs. I think execs would be the better. A lot less executive decisions being made. And the same thing, but I mean, like, animation's been suffering from that since, like, the 40s. After like Snow White comes out, and then they, like, what was the movie that came out after Snow White? I know that one failed.
It was either Pinocchio or no, it was Bambi, Pinocchio, or Fantasia. I cannot remember.
Well, no, Fantasia did really well because of the way that they launched
it was a huge flop.
It was a flop because it didn't do well straight away, but, like, long term it did really well.
Oh, okay. I do know that
because, like, what happened was with Fantasia, if I remember my history correctly, is they... Oh, jeez, we're getting off topic here. But
way off topic.
Yeah, they launched the... because, I mean, this was also back in the, 50s? So it wasn't like today's, like, movie launches where it's like, oh, we'll just launch worldwide and make $1 billion. It was... They had to send it with... and also the big problem was, like, they needed the audio because it was still... It just, like, it was being transported with films, like, around America especially, and it just wasn't doing well initially. And then, of course, the music needed a band, and, yeah, there's a lot of...
Thank God for digital.
Yeah. Makes life a lot easier, and we can mass-produce movies as we have now.
Yes.
So, anyway, back to Kung Fu Panda. And sequels. I think sequels, we just get sort of like very... because, I mean, the second Kung Fu Panda movie... this is where the problem lies. In the first Kung Fu Panda movie, they tell the story quite well. There is no need for a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
If Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3 never existed, it wouldn't be a problem. The world is not bad or worse off for it. Mm-hmm. This is not the worst of all timelines, because we do not have Kung Fu Panda 2. The thing is, Kung Fu Panda 2 comes out anyway, and you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll save that whole commentary for Kung Fu Panda 2, but the point being is, it's not designed. It wasn't designed for a sequel, and that's what we get sort of wary about. Mm-hmm. You're like, I don't need this, and I can say the same thing for Ice Age, and I can say the same thing for
Ice Age, especially that one just kind of like, it was like that movie did sort of well at the box office, and then they were like, oh, we're gonna make 5 sequels.
I think the idea there is,
what are you doing?
I think the idea there is, this is exactly what I'm trying to get into, is saying that is from the artistic standpoint. From the artistic standpoint, I'll say, oh, why are they doing this again? There's no need for it. Like, story standpoint, design standpoint, you're not bringing anything new to the table. Mm. You're not bringing anything new animation-wise. I mean, yeah, the animation is funny. How many times did we laugh at, we laugh at, just the antics, like a character running into a wall and bouncing off of it. I mean, you laugh at the physical comedy. And that's the animators' jobs. But the story-wise, you're like, okay, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. But from the technical point of view, and not the animation technical point of view, like, let's say from the money making point of view, the business point of view, you have all these rigs that you've built. You've got them like decked out with skeletal rigs and everything for the 3D point,
right?
And you've got all these models, and you've got all these, and you've got probably some sort of contract with the voice actors. Mm-hmm. And the last movie made $100 million or whatever it does.
I was joking to you, they probably had to pay $10,000 for every one line Jackie Chan said.
And I thought you might have had a stat there.
No, I wish.
How much was the production of this film?
The budget was $130 million.
And box office?
$631.7 million.
Okay, well, that's good. Is that like over long term, or like
I think that's over long term.
Nonetheless, that's what you want. You want your film to at least make double what you've spent, because that's how investment systems work. And the thing is that, like, people always like point at money and go, boo, boo, how dare you bring money into art? But in order for art to exist, you need money. That was how it has always been. Maybe the only time it was never like that is when a caveman stuck his hand in poop and smeared it on a wall. That was the only time money did not come into art. After that, when people started like wanting canvases and whatever, like, the Renaissance had benefactors. Leonardo da Vinci does not exist without his benefactors. Michelangelo does not exist without his benefactors.
Because guess what, folks? Artists need to eat too.
Yeah, and
we don't sell our doodles and get food in exchange, which is why you always try to pay your artists well.
It would be great if we could just doodle a thing and hand it to the hot dog vendor, but they don't accept doodles for hot dogs. But but yeah, you see, the thing is, it's like, I understand from the business point of view. We have all these resources. Why can't we make another one? And I agree. Make another one. Just make a good story. Like, that's all I ask is, don't just sort of, oh, the last one made 100 million. Because this is typically, again, what we were talking about earlier this afternoon. Typically, the attitude is, it made 100 million because it has the 5 characters in it, or it has the fat panda. That's why it made the 600 million.
If that were true, then what's the freaking, like, how every major blockbuster has some just this awful clone that was made by like this nowhere studio in the middle of freaking God knows where.
How many? Yeah, there's tons of examples.
Apparently this one is Little Panda Fighter, and it's apparently awful.
Well, but that's the thing, right? It's like, they think, even the studio that makes it, like, think, it's the recipe to success in Kung Fu Panda is the panda. And he's cute, and sure, that like plays a big part of it, because people want to go see a funny panda do funny things.
I think also Jack Black helped a lot with the character too, because I noticed he was very hammy.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, but no, but Jack Black's always hammy. That's just who Jack Black is.
Yeah, but it was really nice to like have, you know, because sometimes when you get these celebrity voice actors, like you can't help but think it's, oh, I'm hearing Jack Black play a panda, but I don't know, he seemed to genuinely enjoy the role, so.
Yeah. I've lost track of my thought, but the point being, actually no, I've completely lost track of my thought.
Oh, we were talking about how like, you know, the formulas for making the.
Oh right, yeah. So the formula is sorry, I'm trying to get back into my train. The formula is obviously to them, to the execs. Like that's not how the success works. Like the example that I use, I like from where I read was how people misunderstood the success of the Matrix.
Mm.
Like if whenever you saw people like either trying to make another Matrix or making fun of the Matrix, what comes to mind? The bullet time scene, right?
Mm.
Like the dodging of the bullets. And so, like, there were movies that came out after that that were like, oh, slow down time. That's what made Matrix amazing.
Slow down and then immediately speed it up after that.
You know, and it's like, no, that's not what made the Matrix amazing. What made the first Matrix, at least, amazing was all that stuff was great. Like that was just like a nice technical cherry on top of an amazing story cake.
Right.
What made the Matrix amazing is the story behind everything. Like it's literally a man rising up and fighting like this suppressive regime type of thing. That's the story. It's just now added this layer of trench coats and kung fu, and you know, put that on the blurb. Trench coats and kung fu, Matrix 1. And so the same thing here. Like I feel with sequels, with a lot of Disney, a lot of DreamWorks, a lot of Pixar sequels, is that they're like, oh, this is the success, and they're taking the wrong parts of the recipe, you know. So yes, my opinion is I feel that Kung Fu Panda 1 could have just ended where it was, but I do understand the reasoning behind DreamWorks wanting to extend that lifespan.
Right.
And it also makes them money, right? You want to make it's crazy, right? I want to say they want to make their money back, but as you just pointed out, like what $160 million budget turned into like they spent 160.
It was 130, and the box office was 631.
Yeah, so they made 6 times their money back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, not exactly. You know, I'm not going to sit here and do the math, but like yeah, they did 5 to 6 times their spending, right?
Yeah.
You spend 100 million, you get 600 million back. You did not do badly. You do not need a sequel, really. However, to cut costs, right? You like that 100 million now can be 50 million.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll still get the 600 million back, which it won't happen. I'm sure if you looked up Kung Fu Panda 2 stats, like we don't need to, but
okay.
I'm sure if you did, you'd see the stats are really different. Again,
well, surprisingly, Kung Fu Panda 3 actually opened up pretty strongly. Mm-hmm. Like I think it was either second or third to Deadpool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, geez, well, I mean, this is a weird movie season, right?
Yeah.
Well, not a season, but like this is the beginning of the year with movies where people are starved for that sort of content, and that was like why I was like very sort of worried about Deadpool. And Kung Fu Panda 3 because it's out now.
Boy, were we wrong.
Yeah. So, well, it's not that people won't go to watch movies. People go to watch movies, and I think that's what a lot of people like creators like bank on for this time of year. They're like, oh, people are just so stuffed; they'll go watch anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it could be. I don't know. I mean, I know why they don't do it, but I just wish they would spread out the movies a lot better. But yeah, if a company, the rule of thumb is if they aim to release for a January, February launch, you're probably not going to have a good movie on your hands.
Right. You know? I remember we watched the SpongeBob movie last year, and that was weird.
Why didn't we ever review that? I think we wanted to, but we just never got there.
I remember we discussed it, but then after we got out, we were just sort of like kind of like
yeah. So what did you enjoy about the flick?
Kung Fu Panda, like, honestly, this time around I enjoyed it more, but I think it was because I understand, like, animation a little bit better, I understand character design. Like, I really, like, I mentioned to you, my favorite character besides Poe was Tigress, because I love the way that the way that her body is shaped, like, these really nice curves, but not like voluptuous curves, but the way that everything just kind of flows and the way that her arms are shaped.
The character design in this movie is very good.
Yeah.
Of the five masters, and then Poe the panda, and then the little red panda. What's his name? Master Shifu.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the turtle, like it's like everything about it, it's like really good. My only critique when it comes to, as I mentioned while we were watching, is like Poe came off as very like he has fur, but he comes off as very plasticky. Like his expressions look like a piece of plastic was like pushed in half the time, and it just sort of like bugged me. But every other character was just, in my opinion, very beautiful looking.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, except for Poe's sort of face area in general, like that was like the only, like everything else was fine.
Yeah, his proportions were a lot of fun because he's got these really cute, short, stumpy legs and this really big, fat body with these really long, dopey arms.
Yeah, I mean the idea obviously being that he's goofy and floppy and
just really cute.
Clumsy. Yeah, and it's yeah. Oh, and I mean also to note on the kung fu, it's like I don't know if you know, but each of the kung fu masters is based off a style of kung fu.
Yeah, I did take Kenpo in high school, and it wasn't exactly Kung Fu, but we had a very similar, like, I remember Orange Belt was Tiger, I remember Green was Snake.
Oh, no, I don't mean, like, belt style, I mean, like, there's actual styles of Kung Fu. So when you do Snake style Kung Fu, it's based on, like, open-handed, like, motions and like, rapid attacks.
Well, yeah, I mean, the belt system that we had was essentially the same idea. It was just we had a more system to it. Like, it wasn't, like, when we got into Orange Belt, like, the idea was that the moves that we would learn were very aggressive, but they were not very refined. When we got into the Snake style, it was more, like, or was it Dragon? I'm pretty sure it was Dragon, actually.
Well, the way I understand it, because you get the 5-star Kung Fu style, and like I'm not like nowhere like near even just I'm just like a fan of Kung Fu in like the same way that Poe is. It's like I love watching it and like But from what I've learned is like you get this thing, you get the style called the 5-star Kung Fu style, and you get the 7-star Kung Fu style, and the 5-star is included. It's like you get. I believe it's. I'm trying to remember. I know it's crane, snake, dragon, panther, and I just don't remember the 5th right now. And each one's based around a different way of doing things. So like I know with dragon and panther, those are like grappling techniques. Crane and snake are like quick striking techniques. And then the great thing about Kung Fu is like they've always got like these ridiculous names. I remember there was one move I learned when I was doing Muay Thai was called firstly there's a move called the monkey grabs the peach, okay, which is the idea is you have to I believe you're supposed to split, or as long as you can get down, and you punch the guy in between. Yeah. In between the legs, and like the idea that the monkey grabs the peach, right? It's like he's grabbing it, and then the other one is called the monkey climbs the tree. And how that works is if the guy is, and I just love the names of these things because like when you apply it to the kung fu attack, it's like, oh, I understand why you name it that, but it's like it's like the whispering winds of 1,000 trees or whatever. It's like no, that really exists. Like but they have like more direct names. So with monkey climbs the tree, as long as your opponent is he's kind of tired is when you kind of do it, but he still has to be firm, like strong enough that that you can do this, and he's like in his pose. And if he's really rigid, you can put your one foot on his hip, and then your other foot. Then you use that to like lift yourself up, and then you bring your elbow like behind his head, and so you basically just like bring your entire weight down behind him. But if he sees you doing that, like he can easily just shift his balance and then he'll fall.
I never got past Dragon actually. Like
okay.
I'm trying to as you were speaking, I was trying to remember. So we had Tiger. So basically, it went white, yellow, and then when we got to orange, it was Tiger. And then I'm pretty sure blue was Crane, and then green Dragon, and then there were 3 levels of brown, and that was Monkey.
Okay.
I have no idea if there was one for black. And then, of course, you get, like, 10 degrees of black.
Yeah,
Like,
well, that's your Dan levels, right? So
Yeah.
it's like when you hit the black belt, that means you are no longer training, you are now doing the kung fu, like all the martial art that you're learning. Because, and then like you get like 10 levels of Dan, and when you get your 10th Dan, I believe you get, is it Dan and then Q, or Q and then Dan? I can't remember exactly the order. But anyway, we're not here to talk exactly Kung Fu, we're here to talk Kung Fu Panda.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, so anything else you particularly enjoyed about the film?
Trying to think. I definitely loved the idea of, you know, a fanboy becoming, like, you know, he becomes more than the fanboy, he becomes the doer.
And
like,
he still remains the fanboy. That's what I kind of enjoy, because in the second one, he still fanboys over the five.
Yeah.
You know, and then also the secret, because I've seen the secret like adventures or whatever, the short stories of that, and he's always like, the amazing adventures of Tigress, and she's so amazing, and he's just like, you know. By the way, if I remember correctly, I think in the second one, Panda kind of has a thing for Tigress. Like, is that sort of established in the first one? Because the only time he sort of interacts with her is like I think she like walks in and he's like, hey, you know, like that typical like, oh, like starry eyed, like, oh, look at the girl type of thing. But I always thought, like, to me it was always like, oh, he's just like, oh, like, it's like the Kung Fu Master lady, like, oh goodness, I want to worship her type of thing, not so much as, oh, a lady I want to fall in love with.
I didn't really get that hint. In fact, if anything, there was definitely a resentment, and like
from her side especially. But that's the envy of not being Dragon Master.
Yeah, and this was actually the first time I noticed this trope. But there's a trope. It happened in the Lego Movie, and there's another example, but I can't think of it right now. But like, it's essentially like the strong female character in the sense that she has been training her entire life or several decades, and then this doofball comes in and he's the main character, and oh, I'm the chosen one, and she's like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah.
Like this
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's like not just her though. There's like 4 others.
Yeah, but she definitely shows
plus the main villain.
Well, she definitely shows the most resentment because, as she points out in the movie, like, oh, the turtle was about to point to her, and then suddenly Poe, like, literally falls in from the sky.
Yeah.
And then the turtle's like, oh, JK, it's him.
Yeah, JK. Yeah, no, look, that's definitely a trope that does need to be addressed. The way I saw somebody mention it was like, oh, goofball man comes into play, you know, and then she's like a master spy, and then he picks up the techniques really quickly, and then he saves her type of thing, and she falls in love. Yeah, that's a trope that needs to not necessarily die, but not be used as much.
Yeah, it gets kind of annoying because, like, you want, you know, because, I mean, these characters, like, especially the Master 5, you want to see them...
But again, that's not so much, like, I feel like a lot of writers just, like, they write things like, you know, like, I'll create this character, and then that character is doing these things. And then they'll, like, I mean, the example I always go to is in Silent Hill, the Silent Hill movie, where the story was written for 2 female leads. And if you took out the male lead character in the Silent Hill movie, the movie makes a lot more sense. Like, I've seen a copy, somebody like tried to edit it as best they could, like removing him. Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, now the story at least is a bit more.
I did actually read.
He is so like not necessary, and like that's just typical Hollywood sort of finger in the pie.
I did actually read somewhere, like it was an interview somewhere where the director was like, I didn't even want the male.
No, he wasn't meant to be there at all.
Yeah, it was like, but Hollywood was like, well, you're going to put him in...
Yeah, we need a male, because otherwise it doesn't sell. I mean, we've seen that from Young Justice, which I don't know if you've heard.
Yeah, I heard.
Season 3 for Young Justice.
It's on Netflix, so
suck please. At DC for making your bad decisions.
Oh, I thought I was under the impression what they were going to do is they were going to stick it on Netflix, and then if it got good ratings, then they were going to greenlight it for season 3. So...
No, but it's already on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, but if it does good on Netflix, then they're going to make another season.
No, the season 3 has already been approved. What? It's happening.
Oh!
It's happening!
Yeah!
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, it's like, yeah, screw you, because it's not, like, yeah, sure, more females were probably watching the show, but, I mean, as we were talking about the other day, like, females in general are just taking, like, not taking over, but they're they're being acknowledged as consumers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we know what was the percentage of console owners, female to male?
It was like 60 to 40 or something.
It's
like,
and
we were reading.
So, I don't want to like push any agenda here. I'm not trying to make anything political or whatever, but it's the point is, it's like we've just been. I think one of the reasons why people are sort of just getting fed up with a lot of the industry is because we've been told the same story a billion times over, and we're at this point in the industry where a million stories are coming out a year. And it's not just here. It's not just in the West. Like in Japan too. How many times studios like, oh, we want this recipe. We want another like school drama that follows the same recipe in anime, and it gets frustrating because as consumers, and we should be voting with our wallets, but we don't. I mean, well, we do, but we don't realize the impact that it's having.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Like in this film, I don't feel it suffered too much from quote-unquote anti-female tropes, if you will.
No, I never got that. I never got that impression. Let me just make that clear. But it was the only thing that occurred to me was because it was the first time I had seen that trope.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the first time I was like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't she do more?
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was trying to get into is, when it comes to kung fu films, and this is like, this movie does such a good job of like referencing fights from kung fu movies. I wouldn't like, I know I want to say seven dungeons or seven. Man, if Joel was here, he'd be able to help me because he's also really into kung fu.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the movie's constantly making little references to kung fu sequences, particular movies. That Seven Deadly Chambers. There we go. Right? I think it was Seven Deadly Chambers.
I have no idea.
But like, yeah, there's tons of little references like that.
There were definitely lots of little parts that I noticed kind of felt like they belonged in other movies.
Well, look, definitely the fight sequences. There are fight sequences that are like, that's from like a particular fight.
Yeah.
You know.
And like, I'm not saying they don't belong in the movie. I'm just saying they felt like they were.
They felt like they were references.
Yeah, they were homages.
Yeah, but at the same time, the film does like stand by on its own two legs.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. Like in kung fu flicks, you aren't like, think Dragon Ball Z. You aren't powerful because of, I mean, sure, you are powerful because you have to do training, but you aren't powerful because of the training you do. You're powerful because you have your inner spirit. That's where that whole thing comes from. You know, it's your ki. Your ki is your energy, and that's the thing. It's not that Tigress is a bad warrior. It's not that, like, Manta and Monkey, and it's not like any of them are bad warriors. It's just that Po has the dragon spirit inside of him, and he's just, that's his destiny. There's destiny that comes into play. It's like, it's not Tigress's destiny to defeat this guy. You know? And you'll see in Kung Fu Panda 2, like, Po is still not like properly, fully trained. He was trained enough to be able to maybe get the dragon power.
Right.
You know? And so I think from our Western perspective, like, we don't believe in that whole energy of the universe type of thing, or ki, or chi, or we're very me orientated. So it's like, what I've trained to do is then how well I'm supposed to be able to do something.
Right.
Whereas in Eastern philosophies, and I'm speaking very generally here, there's a lot of like, in Shintoism especially, that's like, do you ever wonder why in Japan especially, I mean, well, Shintoism is mostly Japan, do you know like why they like humanize everything? They put little eyes on things and make them smile and like Mount Fuji has a little anime character face thing added to it, and that's because in Shintoism and subsequently the culture that grew from it, everything has energy inside of it. It's like all part of this chi and this chakra and blah blah blah, and so then they create, like, it creates life. Everything becomes like human-ish. There's a better word for them. I just can't remember.
Anthropomorphized?
Yeah, that wasn't the word I was exactly looking for, but it is. It applies. I'm sure somebody on the other side is like, but
foaming at the mouth. It's this.
Yeah, it's why like a little fun, like a funny anime character, like a little anime character. It's not an anime character, but like a Japanese character it's a poo, and it's got like little
A
smile
little-
and eyes on it,
yeah.
and that's it. It's like that's the energy that's in there. So the idea that this energy is like flowing through everybody, and then it like chooses you to your successes are more on you owe it more to the universe than you do to yourself. You know, and that's where it comes from. It's not that Poe is better than any one of them. It's just that that's his destiny.
Right.
And that's the story we're following right now. We don't have time in this 2.5, like not even 2.5 hours, like what, 90 minutes?
Yeah.
We don't even have time in this movie length to go back in time and learn everybody's histories.
Right.
You're there to follow Poe. You're like, oh, what's this dude doing? And then you're following him and you're like, oh, right, this is what's happened to him now.
Well, I mean, as a writer, actually, because, like, in 2008, I was an undergrad, so that was just sort of, like, the first time I noticed the trope, but watching it again as a writer and as an animator, I definitely agree. Like, as much as I want more of Tigress, I can definitely see that to add more of her would just overwhelm the story.
In the second one, they do. I think there's a little bit more with her. In fact, it starts focusing a bit more on her.
Well, that makes
But
me
again,
excited.
Poe being the main character, they obviously have to, so they sort of mush the two of them together. So that's sort of what I can sort of explain from the story perspective. And a little bit of history there. I mean, a lot of the history that I spoke of there, like a little bit of it is because I haven't done the research on that history. Because like at one stage I was like massively obsessed with Japan and Japanese culture. And not like in the weeaboo way. I mean, sure, anime got me into it. No, it really wasn't. It was like the whole, like, you know when you're genuinely interested in a thing? Like it wasn't just like, oh, I want to go to Japan and I watch their cartoons so they should be able to understand me. Like there was nothing like that. I was like, I watched anime and I was like, oh, this is an interesting culture. Let me look into it. And then I started learning about their ghosts, and Shintoism, and their religions, just the cultures in the different parts of Japan. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is like a rich culture. And then I got like really hardcore into like Samurai the Bushido Code.
Yeah.
And then I learned how bad the Bushido Code was eventually, because like the samurai became corrupted sometimes. And it's like and that's like infinitely fascinating to me. But yeah, I haven't done like hands down like research into that type of stuff in a while.
I definitely love the folklore. I actually took a class on Japanese folklore and legends, and thought I think that was the first time
They have the best horror stories.
Yeah, and it's like
their horror ghosts are great. You know, like from South Africa, we have the Tokolosh that like tickles your feet, and then you know, I mean, I suppose we got Pinky, which you found out about the other day, who is just a ghost that like
spies on little girls in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's like that's his big spooky, but it's still scary. I mean, you don't want that to happen, and he does look
when
ugly,
you're like 5 years old, I mean, can you imagine?
But and then you like look in Western like spooky ghosts, you know, like Bigfoot, and you've got like the Loch Ness monster. And it's like, okay, cool. And then you go to Japan, and then you have like women roaming the streets. You know, I mean, okay, we've got sort of like women like haunting coastlines. Like, oh, where's my husband? Is he coming back? But these women are like, where's my baby? And they're like, oh, it's over there. And you want to get away from the ghost. And then she like runs after you in a weird spider-like frantic movement. You're like, okay, well, I don't need these pants anymore.
That's the thing about Japanese folklore, right? Like, there are rules. Like, what's it? There's this one woman who there's like this one woman, like her mouth is completely distorted where she like ripped her mouth. And she comes up to ask you, like, is she pretty? Like, you know, she comes up and she's like, am I pretty? And if you answer wrong, she'll kill you. Like, that's how messed up Japanese ghosts are.
Oh, yeah, no, straight up. I mean,
also, there are Japanese horror stories that if you hear them, you are cursed forever.
Oh, that's a very popular Japanese, like, horror story trope. Like, not just, like, the hearing of it, but, like, the midnight movie or the midnight text message on a midnight website. Geez, we should
freaking.
Okay,
that's
is
another
Panda,
podcast.
not Japanese horror podcast, but that's an amazing podcast. I would listen to a podcast about Japanese horror movies horror culture.
I'm tempted to do it, but then I would have to do research, and that scares the shit out of me. I am not kidding. I cannot listen to that stuff without I've tried to listen to them.
Maybe one day we'll do Emily's creepypasta or
No, no, just no Japanese horror stories. They legitimately freak me
Yeah.
out.
Oh no, I'm right behind you. Like they're
Okay.
horror movies. But anyway, sorry. Back to Kung Fu. Kung Fu Panda. So one of the things that I noticed while watching is Jackie Chan's voice acting.
Yes.
Not terrible, but it definitely sounded like he was in a booth alone. You know what I mean? Because his lines, like, I mean, you make a good point. It's like, oh, it's like they paid him $10,000 for each of his lines. And so then...
Which is probably why he has only 5 lines in the entire movie.
Even that many, I think it was 3.
Yeah.
You know?
All the other times are like hand gestures. You're like, yeah. I'm like, you have Jackie Chan.
Yeah, it's and the thing is, it's like there was the one point. I think it was when they're holding up the bridge, and he passes his rope to Mantis, and then he goes to help the fight.
Yeah.
And he says something there. It was either there or a little bit before, but it was around that period of the story. And he says something there, he's like, hold on to this or whatever. And the way it sounded, like the sound editing just wasn't perfect. Because it sounded like it was a man in front of a microphone reading a piece of paper and was bored out of his mind.
Yeah.
He's like, hold on to this. You know, it's like I don't know how to make it sound any more dull, because that's just what it was. It was the most dull reading. And sure, it wasn't an important line. It was very throwaway. But when you're like sort of nitpicking at things, you'll pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like that with all of his lines. Really, it always felt like his lines were not read with the rest of the cast. Because I know sometimes with voice actors, especially with these bigger budgets, they have like rooms where they all sit and they've got like headphones on, and they all got their own mics and very, very, very hardcore setup, very expensive setup, and they'll read and then they'll act off of each other. You know, they're like, and that's like the best, because then, you know, when you have the same actors in the same area and they're like, yeah, excited, and they're like goofing around. But when you're by yourself, it's like hard to get a read on the scene, I would imagine. So, and I think that's what happened. At least that's what it sounded like to me.
I think that's kind of one of the reasons why voice acting is both easier and harder.
Like Lucy Liu's voice acting was much better.
Yeah.
She felt like it definitely felt like she was there at least.
Yeah, she definitely felt more into her character at least. Like maybe not fully dedicated, but at least it's like, oh, it's Lucy Liu. Oh, she's a cute little snake. Yay.
Yeah, so that, and another thing I really loved was the cinematography in the film. There was a lot of like really nice, just beautiful shots of like, I mean, like there's the one scene where the characters, like the 5 masters, are like jumping through the air, and it's like they're just jumping across, and there's like smoke on the one side, and then there's like the sun behind them type of thing. It was just that was really beautiful. And just throughout the film, like there was a lot of like really good placement of characters. That's how I put it that way.
I love the sequence where a leopard or whatever, the villain, when the villain escapes from the jail. I freaking love that sequence. Like, everything about it is just so mind-blowing. You know, he's just this one guy just going up against this army of rhinos, and he's just climbing up the rubble as things are exploding, and you're like, whoa!
Oh, yeah, and then, like, I mean, just, like, the sequences of, like, for example, where he blows up, like, he throws the dynamite at them and blows them up, and just, like, them, like, flying out of the thing. Look, Mad Max, the new Mad Max film, still the best cinematography I've seen in a hell of a long time, but this was still pretty good. I mean, that's but you have to do that with animation, right? I mean, in movies in general, but in animation especially, you have to almost turn every frame into, like, a very picturesque setting.
Yeah.
And I think they did a really good job with that. And it had like the motif of China, like Kung Fu China, ancient China. I think they did a really good job with that.
It's very, very colorful, very pretty. Very felt like, I don't know. It felt like there was just they were having fun with just the colors and the setup and the layout of, especially like the scene where they choose a dragon warrior and there's that nice little architecture around. It was just very pretty. There was something that I kind of touched on before we started recording, and you told me to save it for this, which was...
You're talking about the DreamWorks situation?
Yeah, because I kind of have a love-hate relationship with DreamWorks, and because, like, I mean, basically the entire reason DreamWorks even exists is because it was a huge middle finger to Disney.
Because Disney didn't want to go into 3D, right?
Yeah, it was basically, well, I don't know. I think actually it had something to do with Katzenberg. Like, apparently Katzenberg was fired from Disney, and Steven Spielberg, and I don't remember who else, but someone else. Because you know, the DreamWorks, what is it? Like, you know, in the logo they have, what is it? SKG.
Mm-hmm.
The S is Spielberg, K is Katzenberg. I don't remember who the G is.
Couldn't tell you.
But yeah, so I was looking at their filmography, and a lot of people will say that Kung Fu Panda is when DreamWorks started to get its footing. I only understand that retrospectively, because at the time it felt very DreamWorks-esque to me, because the thing about DreamWorks
I remember people being excited that it was a DreamWorks animation.
Yeah, like, I remember people... I think the thing about Kung Fu Panda is it was the first DreamWorks film, besides Shrek, that was okay. It wasn't terrible. Because, like, you know, they kind of got started basically copying the Disney style, what with, like, Ants, which was a straight-off, like, a Bug's Life ripoff. Prince of Egypt was kind of that weird, like, oh, let's just do it and see what happens. Road to El Dorado felt very Disney-ish to me. Chicken Run was another one of those weird, like...
Chicken Run was the first 3D, right?
No, that was
in 2D
stop motion.
I don't remember.
No, remember it was the about the chickens escaping from...
No, I remember the story. I mean, the story is very similar about the whole... The sky is falling, whatever, but...
No.
Wasn't it about the... Oh, that was Chicken
No, that
Little.
was Chicken Little.
Whatever.
We have to watch this movie, Wesley.
I don't remember. I know I've seen it. I just don't. That's how little it mattered to me, I guess.
It was my favorite movie back
Well,
in
then
the
we'll
day.
watch it. And we can review it.
Yes, thank you. Anyway, Shrek was their first 3D film.
Okay.
And that did...
Oh, right. Yeah, that did really well.
Yeah, that did really well because it was hilarious back in the day. Which is why it has 50 sequels. And also a TV spin-off because...
It's not ogre until it's ogre. Shrek is love. Shrek is life.
I knew you were going to do that. That's why I made that face.
Somebody made that reference the other day. I was like minding my own business. I think it was... Yeah, I don't know who it was. But I was just standing, I was thinking, and like, I just hear it behind me, like, Shrek is love. Shrek is life. And I didn't click straight away, because I hadn't heard it in a while. And I just turned and I looked behind me, and he's like smiling, because he knows I know. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. And that was it. That was the conversation. Like, okay.
Well, I was just talking today with a friend about how the way that you used to flirt with me back in the day was write little notes that said, let me tell you about Homestuck.
Oh, yeah.
And
because I know how much you love Homestuck. Close sarcasms.
So... to be fair, just to set the record straight, I don't hate Homestuck, but I tried. I tried very valiantly. I got through 200 pages, and I just rage quit. I was like, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so then you get, like, Spirits, so then after Shrek, you get Spirit, which I actually really like that movie, but apparently no one else did.
I watched it also only once. Might need to rewatch it to get a proper opinion right now.
I thought it was very beautiful.
It was good looking.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like stunning animation. What I little I remember because I watched it when it came out.
James Baxter.
Right. Yeah, the god of animation, the patron saint of animation. We should just get like a little James Baxter medallion.
But yeah, then you get movies like Shrek 2, Shark Tale. I freaking hate Shark Tale, by the way. It's like one of my least favorite films to have.
We're reviewing that song too?
Yes, and you can watch me just talk about how much I hate Shark Tale.
Isn't Jack Black a voice in that too? He's like a shark.
Is he? I think you're right. I think he might be the shark.
That movie I know I haven't seen.
You've never seen Shark?
No.
Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, well now you're gonna ruin that.
Ah.
Like one of our last episodes, it was Strange Magic.
Yeah, which
I have to find that episode. I have to launch it because there's so much anger in that episode.
Yes, we did not like... Well, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would, but I certainly didn't like it.
So anyway, what was your whole thing
But
about
like
DreamWorks.
basically, okay, so you get Shark Tale, Madagascar, Over the Hedge. That was another awful movie. I never saw
Oh,
Flesh
I
Together.
didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's not like something I'd buy on Blu-ray or whatever, but I didn't hate it.
It was just kind of like the whole time.
I liked the little squirrel when he ate the cheesy puffs.
Yeah, but then you get the Shrek the Third. That was awful. B movie. That
I've actually got the entire Shrek collection on Blu-ray. I found my boss at the time bought like a Blu-ray player, and he got like the 5-disc collection with it, and he didn't want it because he didn't give a crap about animation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I'll have it. And I bought it from him for like $20. And so like 5 movies for $20. But it's in my house back in South Africa unopened.
Wow.
I just never opened it. I was like, oh, I'm a collector. Like when I get back into collecting mode, like what you see here is nothing. Like when I get back into collecting mode, you're gonna be like, oh, so much crap. Because I collect things. Like I collect Blu-rays and DVDs and movies. Like I have this huge collection. That is just. But
you're a nerd.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, so then you get Shrek the Third and B movie, which is another one I think we should review, but I'm not gonna like it.
Yeah, I'm not too
many
keen
B
to.
puns. No.
Too many B puns.
No. I'll punch you.
No.
And then anyway, so after B movie was Kung Fu Panda, but then and again it was like one of the first films that wasn't awful in a long span of movies that were
awful.
Okay at best.
Yeah.
But then you get Madagascar 2, Monster vs. Aliens. Some people like that. I didn't care much for. I watched it again recently, and I was like, it's still boring.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Well, what are you trying to get at here? Like
basically, I'm trying to get at that only retrospectively after seeing. But honestly, I feel like How to Train Your Dragon was really the first time DreamWorks really did it right. Like they really hit the nail on the head. I think Kung Fu Panda got really close, though. So I think with Kung Fu Panda, I want to say that it was the first time DreamWorks tried something with passion, as opposed to trying to be Disney but not Disney.
Yeah.
You know, or like trying to add too many pop culture references, because that was a lot of what...
Yeah, those movies, I think the second one does suffer a little bit more from that.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like DreamWorks kind of does this thing where it waves, where it's like they do sort of... They put out crap, and then they put out okay, and then they put out crap, and then it's like, oh my god, this movie is amazing, why don't you do more of this? And then they don't do more of that.
That seems to be animation studios in general. Like, not only just DreamWorks, Disney, Pixar does it too. Not as much, but Pixar definitely does it. Like,
More recently, I find, because people were very disappointed at Good Dinosaur.
I wouldn't say it was disappointing. I just wouldn't say it didn't blow me away.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, I get it. You got this dinosaur.
And
okay.
It's like a boy and his dog, but it's a dinosaur and his boy?
Yeah. It's pretty, yeah, it's that story. Okay, well, the last thing, and I'll probably use it as outro music, I hope, is the... is the kung fu fighting song? Like everybody was kung fu. Like the reiteration of that was just terrible.
Yeah.
Like if you know the song, you're gonna listen to, and you're gonna kind of like sort of twitch and cringe as you hear it. I didn't like it. No, I mean
Gold Star, you tried.
Yeah, and then Jack Black. I don't like it when singers or anybody like I guess it's called scat.
Oh, like when you do this.
Yeah, like, yeah! You know, it's like, everybody was kung fu fighting. He's like, hey, yeah, oh, yeah! I'm like, okay, Jack Black, we get it, you're a singer. Like, don't ruin a song that's already pretty bad. Anyway.
We know you were in School of Rock, we get
it. Yeah, that's just my sort of little 10 cents in regards to that song.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one who kind of was like, this song is not very good.
Okay, well... I don't know. That's all I have to say about the film. That's all we have time for.
I got my DreamWorks rant out of the way.
You hear that, DreamWorks? Emily will never work for you.
Don't say that.
Okay, she'll work for you sometimes.
I really loved How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been a fun show to work on.
Yeah. No, not the first one. The first one, like, they basically, like, I went to a seminar where they were like, this is the program we used for the first How to Train Your Dragon film. And the guy's, like, punching numbers, like, values to make the face move. And I'm like, Yeah, and they were talking about, yeah, well, we didn't really use animators, we used more of mathematicians, but we used animators, and I'm like, that is so sad.
Yeah.
And then they showed us, like, and this is what we did for the second How to Train Your Dragon. It's, like, on a Cintiq, and it, like, grabs the jaw, and it, like, moves with the pen, and, like, the head is moving with the pen, and they're like, yeah, we wanted to do more of a painterly feel, like, we wanted to feel like we were painting more than we were working on a computer. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing!
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the great thing about, like, the bigger studios is they really do invest a lot of R&D money into the software, right? But anyway, is there anything you want to pump?
My usual neuroticartist@tumblr.com. I have been drawing more art. Unfortunately, it is nothing but Undertale fan art, so if you're into that sort of thing, please, let's do art trade. I want to draw all the Undertale, please.
Okay. Well, my Tumblr's up too, I guess, but any questions and answers and corrections you want to send our way, please feel free to email us at theanonymousanimators@gmail.com, but also on the Tumblr site of Anonymous Animators, which I think is anonymators.tumblr.
Yes.
There's an ask button there. Drop us a message. Tell me how stupid I am with my incorrect knowledge, or
tell us what horrible movie to watch next,
or even tell us what movie to watch next. Yeah, we'll talk about it that way. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and chat to you soon.
Have a good night, folks.
Your mind becomes fast as lightning.